Thank you for staying with us. You have been watching the program State of the Nation, and we've been discussing the state of the nation in terms of the economy and the recession that Nigeria has found itself in. And we're talking about suggestions to the government, which the government is seriously considering, and that is the sale of some weak assets in the country. Before we move on in that conversation, I have with me a lawyer, a learned gentleman, and of course a public affairs analyst who will be talking about this with me in just a moment. But before then, I'd like you to listen to this.
Will say there's no earthly reason why 49% of NNPC cannot be privatized. Not, please, don't clap yet. Don't give it out into cabals, friends and relations and kith and kin, and no, let it go public. That even my driver can buy 10 shares of the NNPC that have gone, and there should be limit of what shares any individual or any corporate organization can buy. There's nothing wrong with that. The NNPC will then be run as LNG was run. The LNG, they are doing wonderfully well. And NNPC was doing well until we started running it not the way it should be run. And if it has been run this way in the past, who says it cannot be run that same way in future? We must prevent reoccurrence.
Nigeria's former President, Chief Olusegun Obasanjo, there having his own suggestion to the matter at hand. He says we should make it public, some of these assets that we're talking about now. Mr. Libros Shoma, is this realistic? Sell it to the drivers, sell it to anyone who is interested. Is it realistic?
There's a marked difference between privatization and sale of assets. What Obasanjo is suggesting, it's like they say the government does not have business in business. And so what Obasanjo is saying, former President Olusegun Obasanjo is saying, is you need to privatize some part of it, allow private investors to run NNPC the way business is run, and then makes profit, and then from that profit you get your commission, and not selling it. That's why he said, don't sell to cronies, privatize, so that it is only when you privatize that his driver can afford to buy shares. It is not when you sell. When you sell, you're going to sell to investors.
We have seen cases where privatized assets, this country's assets have been sold and we didn't get the desired results. We can talk about Nitel.
Yeah, exactly. And so you find that
there's still that fear. That
the issue is, it's given the government is not talking about privatizing assets to rake in naira. What they're saying is, look, there's a shortfall in our revenue expectation with the crisis in the Niger Delta and the price of oil. And so what we need now is, how do we recoup? Where do we get the shortfall in dollars from? And so what are we talking about? Are we looking at even ending the crisis or finding lasting solution to the crisis that led to the dwindling revenue from the Niger Delta? Nobody's looking at these options. We're looking at quick fix, which for me will be a win-win situation for the Kaba, and it's like selling your future for you because you want to eat now. We're not in that situation economically where we'll have to sell our future. What we need to do now is for us to look at medium-term solutions and long-term solutions. We know mistakes have been made in the past, and some of the mistakes we made in the past is that of all the revenues that we made in the past, all of them went into recurrent expenditure. And the same thing is going on here now. Nobody's talking about cutting down on the prices, on the recurrent. Nobody's talking about cutting down on the expenses of our leaders. And yet you talk about selling national assets. What it means, if we continue like this, we're going to sell and use it to feed are recurrent.
No,
and before you know it, we're back to the same position.
To be fair to the economic team, they have put a caveat there that the kind of agreements or contract that they're going to sign if they eventually go ahead with selling some shares would be to give the government the position to buy back when the economy is resuscitated. Does that not make sense?
The next question you would ask yourself is, which businessman would tie his money down? It's like you're telling me, I want to borrow me some money, and then I'll put my asset down as a collateral. No businessman with the current economic crisis and world over, no businessman will give you that kind of fund and expect that before you even start raking in profit from his investment, you are buying it back. At what profit? And mind you, I had even told you that showing up your reserve will not lead you out of this current crisis. So even if you sell, you make 15 billion now, and you don't invest it properly in capital project, you all because you want to show up your revenue. All you're going to have is you're going to have speculative buyers who will feel, oh yes, the dollar had come down for a reason, mop up the same dollar, shut them up, and then when it comes up, you sell again. What we need to be looking at are long-term solutions and not these short-term solutions of selling assets. It won't work.
All right. One point you've raised that point twice in the course of our conversation, is the issue of trust.
Yes.
That in the past, people have followed the government in certain controversial decisions and just trusted the government, and they didn't gain from that trust. We seem to have a government in place that has a leverage in terms of trust levels. Would you suggest that we go with the government?
No. You see, the trust that you talk about is not the trust that we have. Well, that's why when people talk about trusting the government, it's all about the president. But do Nigerians trust the team, the president's team? We have seen situations even in this country where you see there are deniers and shifting of burdens. That's where the major problem is. And so one also would have expected the ones that had been sold before that are non-functional, what is the current team doing to ensure that some of those issues are well sorted out and agreement reached are implemented, not at least 50%. But nobody's looking at that direction. We're saying now, even the ones that are remaining, let us sell. And that's why people are beginning to say no. Are there no alternative to this? I say there are alternatives.
So tell me, what are those alternatives?
Alternatives, first and foremost, we need to begin to look at, because what led us to this was the fact that the government said they were expecting a sale of a barrel of crude oil, and the crisis in the Niger Delta reduced the sale to half. And so the proceeds coming from there, that's the shortfall they're talking about. So we need to first and foremost also begin to look, how do we ensure that the crisis is there? It's a loophole that you need to plug. And you need to plug that loophole so that also that will help you show up your revenue. And then we need to begin to look at privatizing and not selling outrightly assets that are performing. Nobody's even talking about assets that are not performing. We're talking about selling assets that are performing. How do you sell your best cars in your garage and leave the ones that are not working? And then also, one of the ways out of this also is for us to begin to look at, we're saying we're diversifying into agricultural production, but nobody's talking about agricultural processing. Processing is where the money is. Look at Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire makes $2.3 billion from production of cocoa. But in Switzerland, the makers of chocolates makes about $234 billion from the same cocoa by processing it into chocolate.
Mr. Libros Oshoma, we have to leave it there.
My pleasure.
Thank you very much. I've been speaking with Mr. Libros Oshoma, a lawyer and a public affairs analyst who's been talking about the conversation going on in the country right now, and that's the suggestion that we should sell some of our national assets. We'll take a break right now. When we come back, we'll be talking about matters arising from the just concluded elections in Edo State. Join us again.